Good evening. Tonight, we will be discussing a very special figure in literature and the movie films. You may know him as Vlad Tepes or Vlad the Impaler, Prince of Wallachia. Come, sit by the fire and warm yourself with a little wine as we delve into the mysteries and the horrors awaiting us as we unfold the great and secret knowledge of Count Dracula.
Welcome back to The Great and Secret Knowledge. I'm Jeff. This is a speculative fiction podcast. And to join me this week, one of my dear friends, Jayme Antrim. Jayme, who are you? What are you all about? Tell the listener.
I'm Jayme. I write stories. I've designed a couple tabletop role-playing games, which are free. I like scary movies a lot. And I love me some Dracula. So when I saw Jeff presented me with a whole list of possible topics, and as soon as I saw Dracula, that's the one. It's got to be. I just started shouting Dracula.
Just in your house?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even care. Like, I didn't even care which Dracula we were going to talk about, book, movie. They're all good.
Hell yeah. Well, I finished watching this a couple times, so I went and got the annotated Dracula an audiobook and listened to that today. I didn't quite finish it, so I didn't get to the annotations, but I have some insights that might inform our reading tonight. I had read it before, but apparently I forgot almost everything, so that was interesting. It's weird how
I've read
that'll
it
happen.
for the first time this year, oddly enough.
Ooh.
Uh, yeah, it was just randomly. I was in a book club that just like someone brought up the possibility of reading it, and once again, I just started like shouting Dracula. Uh, but that's my go-to. Um, and I also got an annotated copy because I wanted to like get some of the, inside baseball, secret history of Dracula going. And I spent 3 days researching online which annotated version to go with because I wanted to make sure I got all the Dracula secrets.
That's funny. I was looking at the audiobooks and I was like, well, this one's 14 hours and 20 minutes. That's the basic book. And then they like kept inching larger. Like one's 15 hours and something, and one was 17. And I'm like, that's got to be a trick. I'm going to have to research this. I picked one in the middle.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm like, if this thing is telling me it's got 1,200 thread count, I don't know. That's suspicious. It's only $50. No way. All right. Well, we are a speculative fiction podcast. So tell me, what was your upbringing in terms of this stuff? What was your first foray or genre? How old were you when you fell into this obsession, passion, whatever?
I think I had the good fortune of being a kid in the 80s, which I kind of feel is like a high point for vampire movies. And I know a lot of folks, they prefer like you've got the gothic horror of the original and sort of the Hammer horror, kind of like revising that and sexing it up a little bit. But what I particularly appreciated about 80s vampires is they seemed determined to like abandon gothic horror and recontextualize vampires in the suburbs. And so you had movies like Lost Boys, which is set in Santa Cruz, California. You have like Monster Squad. There's another one which I'm probably going to talk more about later, which actually does have Dracula in it. And I don't know. I just Fright Night is another interesting one.
Is
Which
Fright Night the one with the two people move onto Tom Hanks's street, or is that
No,
the
that's The
Burbs?
Burbs. Yeah,
Okay.
my all-time favorite movies. Um, Fright Night is the one. It's got Susan Sarandon's brother, the Prince Humperdinck, the Princess Bride, Christopher Sarandon, I think. He's playing like the Dracula role. He's just like it's very similar to The Burbs. He moves in, and like this young boy across the street is obsessed with watching his house, almost a little rear window. Uh,
Yeah.
and then he winds up calling on a horror host who knows of such things, and can advise him. But yeah, like I was just like swamped in the kind of like 80s vampire revival. And from then on, it just kind of like reaching back out to the earlier movies from there.
Did you ever see Dracula Dead and Loving It
Oh
with
yeah.
Leslie Nielsen?
Yeah. The geyser scene with like the blood effect and they're staking. Yeah. That's a great one. And then, so that was like vampires in particular. Plus, like as a kid, like I was raised, like my dad used to read me Edgar Allan Poe, uh, a lot of the poems and some of the stories when I was a kid. So it's like right from the get-go, I was primed to get into spooky stuff.
Oh, I love Poe. What about the Murders on the Rue Morgue?
Yeah, yeah,
So scary. Or Cask of Amontillado.
yeah, yeah. That's such a classic. Um, and Black Cat. I recently discovered. I know I've read it before, but I kind of rediscovered. It's like Bernice, I think, or Berenice, or something like that. And so it's a very messed up story that I was kind of surprised even got published in whatever year it got published in. It's highly gruesome, uh, and
Hmm.
it's about a fellow who suffers from, I think, in the story, and that kind of like lovable like Victorian medical diagnosis language. I believe they say he suffers from like monomania. So it's kind of like hyper fixation or hyper focus, and he'll just like hardcore be into something for days. Uh, and then it kind of gets weird and spooky from there. That was kind of like an interesting like rediscovery of Poe that I missed when I was younger.
I'll have to see if my book is still down there on the bookshelf.
Nice.
Crack that one up. Bernice. What was the name of his dead love that would reference sometimes?
Oh, I think there was like Lorelei and Annabelle Lee. I think there were a couple of
Anna, what?
Annabelle Lee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one I
I
was
think
thinking
The
of.
Kingdom by the Sea. Yeah, that's a really good one.
So you got your Poe, you got your Drax, your Vamps. Did you get into comic books at all?
I got into comic books when I was a very little kid. I'd occasionally just like grab one off the shelf. I liked Thor. I really liked one called The Power Pack, which was about little kids. Um, so it's about a space unicorn crash lands. He's being like hunted by basically the aliens from V, and he bestows upon these kids, like his power. It's kind of like this prismatic, his powers break into 4 segments, so each kid gets a different power. And what I liked about it as a kid is that it fairly realistically dealt with like the what it'd be like to be a kid and try to be a superhero. But it's very much like you're the age that where you can get grounded. You're the age when like even Spider-Man, who you would think would be understanding, is very much like, you're 8, like go home. You shouldn't be out here. They're like giant lizard aliens around. You're gonna get killed. And I liked Amethyst, which is another good one. It actually influenced the first book I wrote in a weird way. Yeah. That was kind of like an American schoolgirl kind of Alice in Wonderland's over to a fantasy world. A very like little girl wish fulfillment, I think. But I liked it because it was, it was kind of like swords and sorcery uh fantasy comics, but with like then at the end of the day you like check out and like log out of the fantasy world and you go back home to America, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's a fun device.
Yeah. But I never really got super into comics. There was like a brief resurgence in the 90s when everyone got back into them, Death of Superman and all that.
So like when you were in middle school and I came across you with a book, like often than not, what kind of book would that have been?
I was very much I liked sci-fi a lot. I was always at the library and I would just get like a huge stack and read books for about, a half an hour. And if it doesn't catch my interest, I move on to the next one. I loved a series of lighthearted comedy novels called Myth Adventures by Robert Asprin. He was an interesting guy. He started out doing these like they're very short by today's standards, like 130 pages or something. And he liked to say that he only got his job or he only got published because of Discworld, because like someone had proved that you can sell comedy fantasy. And they were about a kid who wanted to learn just enough magic so he could be a thief. Like, I just want to pop open a door and like steal, basically. And he winds up teaming up with a demon who's really more like an interdimensional alien kind of a guy. And the two of them basically turn into like hardcore con men, where through a series of misadventures, everyone becomes convinced that the kid, Skeeve, is this all-powerful, like mercenary wizard, and you can hire him as a fixer. And really, he knows like disguise self and light and maybe one other spell. And it's just constantly like on the verge of destruction and chaos, and they're trying to like swindle armies and not get killed by other powerful wizards and stuff.
That's fun.
Yeah, those books were good. And of course, Stephen King. I love Stephen King. I read a million Stephen King books.
So you've read The Dark Tower?
I got through halfway through Wizard and Glass, and it was just that was
That's a weird one. Yeah. So much time spent with 2 kids in love, and it's like, we know death is coming. And then it cuts back to this weird Wizard of Oz pastiche that's like, what's going on over there? Yeah, that's a weird book.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, pacing is very important in novels. Like my favorite fantasy books, aside from the Myth Adventure series, like I love like Black Company, just because that book feels like they do in a chapter what most books do in a novel. And when a book like respects your time, I'm much more inclined to read it. And the first 3 Dark Tower books, they fly by,
Yeah.
They're like pulp. They're pulp. And then the fourth one is like out of nowhere, like very slow paced, high concept, high fantasy kind of. And it felt like we flipped into a whole different world.
Yeah, and once it's over, like, you looking back, you can kind of be like, well, no wonder he had a hard time finishing it, because that was such a bizarre left turn. And it's like all the things that happen in that that are weird come back in a big way in the last 3. So it's a real undertaking. I created an entire podcast to kind of like patch up some of those plot holes.
Oh, nice. So would you say it's worth finishing the series? Because I've thought about going back and just sitting down and reading them all.
I would recommend the audiobook. I don't know if I could hammer through that prose, or like maybe take it in bite-sized chunks. Like I listened to a podcast and would read a little, listen to the show, like, you know, one of those read along ones. It's a big undertaking, and some of the things that happen, the developments are so like, oh yeah, this is an old man that forgot how his books work.
Yeah.
He's coming back to it 20 years later.
And plus, if I recall, like the Wizard of Glass was like one of the first like post-accident books, you know? And
I thought that was before, but you may be
right.
right.
Was it before?
I think it's before because the accident made him want to finish them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's understandable for sure. I might be thinking of Dreamcatcher.
Yeah. Dreamcatcher. I haven't read that one.
That is a weird book. Oh my God. The movie and the book are both very strange. There are things. Okay, so Dreamcatcher is his homage to War of the Worlds. I don't think I'm spoiling too much by saying that. So basic premise is you've got 4 adult guys who are kind of like going for like a boys' night out at a cabin. And then, you know, sci-fi horror ensues. But it's Stephen King, so it gets like very high concept and weird. And next thing you know, you're dealing with like mind palaces and
King can't resist a fucking mind palace.
He can't. He loves it.
Lousy with them.
There are scenes where like someone's like literally like in their mind palace, like hiding boxes of files, so an alien intelligence can't read their memories.
Amazing.
In the book, the alien intelligence adopts what is in a line, and you can forget about it because you're only reading a book. There's a line about the alien intelligence having, I think the exact phrase is like an effete British accent, like a James Bond villain. And I'm like, that's strange. And moving on, and I just read the rest of the book. In the movie, though, this poor actor is forced to do the voice for like 40 minutes, and it is a hard watch.
Why didn't they just hire an effete British person?
I don't know, like a Peter O'Toole or something. It could have totally worked. No, this was just, I think he's
Bill
just some
Nye,
American.
He's sitting right there.
That would have been amazing. Yeah. Dreamcatcher the movie is also funny because it released on DVD during the height of the alternate ending phase, when they used alternate endings as a selling point. I challenge the listeners to find a movie with 4 worse endings than Dreamcatcher, because you see the one in the movie and you're like, that's pretty bad. There's 3 alternate endings. Let's give them a try. No, they just get worse and worse.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I've seen it like 5 times. Like it's a fun watch, but it is not a serious
until
movie.
Very recently, I had a huge long break with Steven. I jumped off around Desperation. That guy tack and his body parts decaying. Like I just couldn't. And then I came back for The Institute. Have you read The Institute?
No.
Ooh, it's very good. It's like, what if Firestarter, but the shop still had her?
Oh, sounds amazing.
In an institute. But it's one of those books, A Tale of Two Halves, you know, where like if you don't like one half, the book just fails completely. So some people just don't like that one character, so it's hard to vibe with the book. But I think it's really good. I haven't seen any of the recent Stephen King movies though. Like, what's the Mr. Sleep?
I probably shouldn't comment, Mr. Sleep. If you're gonna
What, do you
watch it,
know
watch.
somebody that worked on it?
No, I have to. If I comment on Mr. Sleep, I have to admit I've never seen The Shining, despite being like a horror guy. I've never seen The Shining. Um, Even worse, I
Do you
think
want
I've
me to cut this part out? I mean, that is pretty
no,
embarrassing.
it's highly embarrassing. It's so weird, and I know this. I know this about myself, but it's so weird. I have multiple people have made me promise that if I ever see it, I have to watch it with them because they're so mad that I haven't seen
Oh
it.
no, and now you have to have like an 8-way Zoom call.
Yeah, yeah. I've thought about it like this year. Like, what if I just, get the old gang together? It feels like a good way to accidentally summon a ghost or something. We all meet together and watch the movie.
At least those creepy little twins might
Yeah.
make an appearance.
So even worse though, I have seen the remake with the dude from Wings, Steven Weber.
The officially Stephen King approved
Yeah, this
version.
is the good one. I have seen that, which is pretty made for TV.
Yeah, I tried to watch it. I didn't like it. I think I might have fallen asleep and waken back up for the garden
Oh
battle.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, those hedges look pretty goofy. Oh, and now the hotel's on fire? Wow, I did miss a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't speak to that one.
I have seen Doctor Sleep. It's really good if you watch the extended edition. So I think I've seen both. And the extended edition is basically the real movie. Um, I want to say I think that's a Mike Flanagan picture. He's kind of your go-to Stephen King guy these days. I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan.
He did Gerald's
Gerald's Game,
Game.
yeah.
Did he do it?
He did not do it. I forget who did it. It was originally going to be Gary, the guy who did True Detective season one, and then the project got yanked out of his
Hmm.
hands. Um, the first It movie is really good, and like the original like '90s made for TV it's got its problems, but it's like one of my favorite movies growing up. And I went
Ah,
into the remake thinking there's no way I'm gonna like this. I adored it. It's really nice. The remake of
cool.
and then part two came out. It just burned all the goodwill. Uh, it's very strange.
Yeah, I feel like I noped out of part 2,
Yeah.
but maybe I saw it all the way through. Do they go to the underground and there's a bunch of things flying in a cylinder or cone or whatever up? Everything's
I
floating?
yeah, there's some floating going on.
Or
And
is that just
there's
the end of the first one?
I want to say I think they kind of like redo the ending like twice. Only
I
now
don't
they're
remember
adults.
seeing a giant spider. Was there a giant spider in the new one?
I don't think so. I think there was like kind of like a boss form of Pennywise. Um,
We
it's
are
it's kind of
getting
weird.
way
Yeah,
far afield with
this
our
is
Stephen
this is
King
our Stephen
talk, but
King episode. Yeah, yeah.
for a deep analysis of Stephen King movies, good and bad, listen to King Me. It's very filthy, but they're good boys. You can get granular analysis over there. So you're into the horror, you're into the sci-fi, and you always liked Dracula. What's your relationship with Dracula now? Do you watch it once a year? Do you like watch all forms of it? What's going on there?
It's kind of a I kind of like part ways with Dracula, and then I get back into it. This has been a year of Dracula for me. It started with that random uh, book assignment, and then I wrote a story about Dracula that just got published in an anthology, and then
Nice.
I went on like a Dracula deep dive after I read the book because I'm like I want to see all the movies, and Christopher Lee, who's amazing, was Dracula numerous times in like unrelated franchises, which I think is interesting. You don't often see, you don't see like somebody playing the same character outside of continuity for different studios a lot, right? Because at that point you kind of like transcend the character, or vice
That's a thing
versa.
that could only happen with public domain stuff, right? Especially in
Yeah,
this era.
yeah. The only other time I can think it might have happened is through some weird rights issue with James Bond. I think there was like a Sean Connery movie that doesn't count, I want to
Oh,
say.
Never Say Never Again. That's the
Okay.
weird one. That's like not the Broccoli brothers.
Yeah, yeah. Which, no offense to people named Broccoli, that doesn't sound like a real family name. Like if you told me like the Broccoli brothers were coming, I'm instantly imagining like the Hammer brothers from Mario or something.
Yeah. No, that's a great comp. Yeah. Just flinging those hammers around.
Or giant broccolis. Um, and like Dracula was my number one Halloween costume when I was growing up. Just about every Halloween, I went as Dracula. Um, I don't know what I like about Dracula. Like he's got, style. He's got magic powers. He's basically like an evil wizard. He's got a cape. He does mind control. He can shapeshift. Easily one of the most interesting power sets of. It's an interesting power set because his abilities are, they're all over the place, but they're also limited. It's not like you're dealing with like a Freddy Krueger who can just do anything as long as he's in the stream. Like Dracula, he can turn into mist. He can shapeshift, sometimes a wolf, sometimes a bat. He can do mind control, but it's like usually limited to whether or not you have like strong will. It's possible, as we see in the
Yeah, in this
movie.
film, yeah, Renfield has a strong will.
Oh,
Not
Renfield? No,
Renfield, Van Helsing,
Helsing.
Dr.
Yeah,
Van Helsing.
yeah. Renfield's like he's over in two
Nah,
seconds. Like
his
that
will
guy.
is puny.
Will was his dump stat.
Yeah, and Drac has some good limitations, kind of like Superman with his kryptonite. Drac has garlic, wolfsbane. Now, interestingly, in this version, there's nothing about a threshold and having to be invited in.
Yeah,
I found that really interesting. It
yeah,
must be a
definitely.
later addition to vamp lore.
I'm not sure. That is one of the things I do kind of love about vampire stories in general is much more than zombie stories, because this is like a side rant, but like in zombie fiction, we have that weird thing where we always pretend no one knows what a zombie is. Even
Mm-hmm.
in this day and age, what could that be? It's a zombie, obviously. But okay, so in vampire stories, we all acknowledge that there are such a thing as a vampire, but then you get the scene, forget everything you've heard about vampires. But then they tell you like this, okay, garlic works, but not crucifixes, but like sunlight works, but like not the water. And they just like go down this weird checklist, like toggling weaknesses and powers. And it's the same stuff every time. But they always act like it's this mind-blowing revelation, which I love.
Yeah, I think Stephen King in Salem's Lot went with that more zombie model. Like, it's like people are able to finally eventually accept that they're real, but like nobody wants to say the V word for like over half the book.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, when somebody knows that vamps are about, I mean, well, we see it in the first scene of the film. A guy's like, there's fucking vampires. They're up there, man. And
Yeah.
Renfield's like, what? Give me a break. Oh, this is great. Well, let's get into it. 1931, Dracula. What do you think of this song that starts off the film?
I like it. None of the music particularly feels like it was made for it. I think at one point they play Swan Lake. Um, I heard like a random factoid somewhere, which that's probably wrong, but I heard that there was like an initial cut of the movie with more music, or maybe they just ran it past studio heads, and the audiences were confused by the source of the music because it was, what do you call it, non-diegetic. It wasn't coming from like a phonograph or symphony or something. So then they just decided to use virtually no music in Dracula. Um,
Whoa. So this is one of the early talking films, right? So
Yeah.
so folks just weren't ready for it. Like it, it was like what's his Marty McFly's guitar solo at the end of the Chuck Berry song.
Yeah. And like if you think about it, just I think 9 years before this came out, you had Nosferatu in 22. And that was like a silent film, title cards, you know? And so like there I think there had only been a few vampire movies leading up to 31 Dracula. And I believe that this was the first like legitimate talkie vampire movie made. I think there was one other, London After Dark, which is like a lost movie. I forget, but I don't quote me on this. Same director, but I don't think that there's actually vampires in that one. I've never seen it, obviously. No one, no one my age has. It's a lost film. Uh, but yeah, I think this movie is so old that like audiences were unfamiliar with like the language of cinema. And like if I hear
Wow.
music, but where's it coming from? I'm confused, you know? Oh.
This is my happening and it's freaking me out, man.
Turn down that racket.
It's especially weird because silent films were played with a soundtrack.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have just had a pianist at the piano with a cape pretending to play, and then they would have been fine with it.
That's a great point. Maybe people are like, I'm used to seeing the guy. Like, is this coming from the next building? Where am I hearing this? I'm confused. But yeah, there are whole swaths of this movie, and I find it makes the opening of this movie especially eerie for like carriage ride after, he's handed the crucifix and he's riding along with the mysterious carriage driver, which who knows
Oh,
who that could be.
that spooky mofo. All right, well, let's get into it. Bela Lugosi, what do you think of his performance?
I mean, it's iconic. Um, it's very arguably the best Dracula. It certainly like set the template for Draculas to come. Um, you can certainly make an argument for Nosferatu, like that more of like ghoulish, uh, cadaverous appearance. But I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but like I don't think Nosferatu caught on as well for a reason because he's just like there's nothing really appealing about Nosferatu, right? And then here comes Dracula. Bela Lugosi, he was a romantic lead in his home country. He's a good-looking dude, used to playing romantic leads. And like, I don't know if that's what the direction was from the director. Like, yo, be a hunky Dracula. But he was. It worked.
Hell
And
yeah.
yeah, he's excellent at leering at people, just like not blinking and staring at them.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
creepy. It's got that one bar of light over one
Yeah.
eye.
The Emperor in Star Wars effect where they're just like shining a pin light on your eyes. Um, I really adore Bela Lugosi in this, and um, one of the things I think is special about this movie that you really don't get in a lot of Dracula adaptations is so I think it's easy to look for modern audiences, but as best as I can figure, this was a contemporary film, right? Like they're cars. It's certainly not set year Dracula was written. Um, and they have, more modern technology that to us it seems outdated, but when it came out, it must have seemed like normal, right? So, and then in the midst of all this like normalness, you have this dude who just shows up dressed for the opera, top hat, speaking like some like, and I thought it was, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I loved that scene where Mina actually makes fun of him for being old fashioned. And she's like doing a Dracula impression, like making fun of how he talks. And it's funny because like I think for a lot of folks when they think about this movie, it's hard to remember like just how out of time the character Dracula was in this film. He's very much like a guy from 1700s who walks into the 1930s. And then it would have been
Yeah.
like one of those films where like a knight comes from King Arthur's court in the modern day.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Nandor on What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. Like, just he really has not caught up with the modern age just yet. So our first scene's this beautiful canyon painting, carriage going through the rocks. We're among these peaks. It's a bygone age, I believe, is the quote that the tourist says. There's five
Okay.
passengers. Tourist lady reading from the book. Among the rugged peaks, crumbling castles of a bygone age. And then some person there says all this foreboding shit about where we're going. We must reach the inn before sundown. It is Walpurgis night, the night of evil. Nosferatu. Hey, I've heard that name.
I adore this kind of like Transylvania, like cozy, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Not suspicious. Oh my God. Jeff, help me out. When you believe in like spooks and specters,
Superstition?
superstition. Yeah, they're all highly superstitious. Um, they're right, of course. And I would advise anyone traveling, like if you're going to like a random country and like literally everyone is like, we're afraid of the local cryptid or whatever, just go with it. They're probably right. They know this place better than you do.
Yeah, meeting a stranger at midnight at a place nobody wants to go to seems ill-advised.
Yeah.
Even before you find out that he's out here murdering him and his wives. So you like that superstitious locals. It's a great trope. It comes back again and again. All through the X-Files, Supernatural.
And I think specifically like the idea of this kind of like out of time tavern of folks. Like there's that American Werewolf in London movie. They also have, the Stay Off the Moors scene. There's a video game Quest for Glory 4 set in Moldavia. And they have like an inn. I used to just like chill there for hours as a teenager, listening to like the creepy organ music and soaking in the ambience.
What was that one called?
Quest for Glory 4. It was a series of like action RPGs mixed with puzzle games a little bit, like King's
Oh, that's
Quest.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm all about it. If this was me, if I was Jonathan Harker, I'd have been like, you know what? Forget this castle. I'm just gonna hang out with these cool dudes. Not get killed by Dracula.
Yeah, these friendly people. So the carriage rolls in, there's geese in the yard, and a whole metric ton of people come out to welcome the coach. Everybody in the inn comes out. It's like, yay, the coach has returned. I don't know if they're getting their like Time magazines and their like, chocolates from Switzerland. Like they seem real excited, whatever's coming in this coach. Or maybe they're just customers for the inn.
That could be it.
But I just love their enthusiasm. They're like, yay, everybody's here. Get in.
This is the only thing that's happened today.
Yes,
we love
that's
this.
another point. Yeah. And this white hat American is like, don't take my luggage off. I'm still going. And the innkeeper is like, dude, no. Your driver does not want to do it. You should not do it. You should stay here. There's ladies hiding at their windows, like peeking out. Let's see. He's meeting another coach on Borgo Pass at midnight. And the guy's like, who are you meeting? And he goes, Count Dracula. Count Dracula's? Count Dracula's name scares the hell out of these rubes.
Again, another bad omen for your travels there, buddy. If you're meeting like a rich foreign guy in a country far from home and everyone's afraid of him, maybe Maybe just chill in the tavern. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe invite him to the tavern, public place, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the daytime, if the problem was his bad nighttime reputation.
Just wait for them to get telephone service. A couple of years tops. It'd be a much different novel. Or movie.
You know what? That's a great point. Why is he going all the way there in 1931 when he could just make a phone call?
I think there's a lot of this stuff in this movie that doesn't really make sense or check out if examined too closely.
Because it's lifted from 1860 or whatever.
Stuff that's updated, and also like stuff that just feels like cutting room floor. And for whatever reason, they're just whittling it down to 70 minutes. Like whatever.
Yeah. I like the quote, the innkeeper. "No, you mustn't go there. We people of the mountains believe that at the castle there are vampires. Dracula and his wives, they take the form of wolves and bats. They leave their coffins at night and feed on the blood of the living."
I was going to ask what you thought of that scene right there.
I just have to put myself in the mind of Renfield and be like, a person just said that shit to me. Maybe I should think about this and, like, you know, talk to the other people in town. Be like, is that guy out of his tree?
It's kind of interesting.
They're really Draculas.
It's interesting because that was all created for the movie. That is very much like world building, exposition, info dump early on to like catch audiences up with what a vampire is. In the book, like they talk a little bit about, I forget exactly what they say. There's like rumors about, you know,
it's a real slow burn. Not only is it not Renfield, it's Jonathan Harker going to like meet the client of his boss who he's never met. And slowly, the closer he gets to the place, people are doing this, you know, like, I don't know if you want to go up there. And he's even there a while before he sees any, like, blatant vampire shit.
Yeah.
And here they're just like, yo.
Here's our vampires, right? Like, they got coffins, they drink blood, there's brides. They lay it all out for you, which I think is kind of an interesting move. I think ultimately, like, it probably works, right? Because I don't, you know, as much as mysteries are important and the dramatic question, all that, if we're at a time and people are baffled by soundtracks, maybe the play is just let them know how vampire works, like in the first 5 minutes. Otherwise, they're going to be like, coffins, what? I'm out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I also have a question is like, even going back to Bram Stoker, is some of this just basic Orientalism or like racism against the poor locals of Romania? Like, are we supposed to think of this guy as just an excitable rube? Or
I mean,
are we supposed to agree with him like right up top? Because I can't quite tell what the filmmaker wants me to think.
So there's an interesting difference about the novel is so in the book, I believe how it worked is that in the book is Jonathan Harker, and he's a Protestant, and so the locals are handing him like a crucifix. You know, they're Catholics, so there's kind of like I think in the book there's plenty of racism. Don't get me wrong, right? But I think don't get me started. Yeah, but in this initial scene, I believe a lot of it was more of like religious, like bigotry. Like he was dismissing their beliefs basically as, oh, they're backwards. They're handing me a crucifix. I don't believe in it, right? And that was a lot of like him taking the cross in the book is almost like a borderline like blasphemy for him. But ultimately, he did it to like make the woman feel better, right?
Yeah, because he's Anglican Protestant, and I notice even later in the books when it starts really getting into the vampire shit, Van Helsing, spoiler, busts out some wafers, and they're like, "What are those?" And he's like, it's Catholic stuff. Don't worry about it.
Dude, the wafers are amazing. If we do like additional episodes, like we're probably I want to talk about the book at some point. And the wafers come back in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which I
Ooh.
cannot believe anyone filmed that. It's amazing. Um, I love it. So yeah, there's your deep cut vampire lore people. Wafers. Just if you're out of crucifixes, get a wafer.
Yeah, Van Helsing had a hookup. He got them in bulk.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I believe since we've completely eliminated the religious aspect, um, I think it was just like these locals. They're not civilized. I'm from the city. They're backwards and they don't know. They believe in these goofy things or whatever. That's the impression I get with him being almost like a snarky and dismissive. You know, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and it's funny because our audience insert here is an American. That makes sense, right? Americans made this, I think.
Yeah,
Or maybe with the British jointly. I don't know. Um, but our audience insert, eventually, we don't want to be anything like that guy. He goes downhill fast.
it's really interesting. I was gonna also wanted to see what you thought about because I think the change from Parker to Renfield like completely changes the movie or the story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's an important change because in the book, it's almost like these two different stories, and if you count Renfield, three different stories, are stovepiped so that the people in them never really meet until the very end, more or less, if they're still alive
Yeah,
or whatever,
if they're lucky enough to be. Yeah,
Yeah. And that just doesn't work for films, especially in the early days of films. It's like we've got 5 characters. They all have to
yeah.
be more or less in every scene or every other scene. So we can't be mucking about with all these separate storylines. So, but the choice of making this Renfield means that Harker is a less interesting character
Yes.
because he didn't suffer this horrendous trauma at the hands of Dracula.
He doesn't really do anything. He's just there for there to be like a young, handsome guy to stand there. At
Yeah.
times, you need a young, handsome guy to stand there. So it's not just like old professors talking about vampires the whole movie. And Mina, too, I'm sure we'll get into that later, but Mina was kind of robbed in this movie, I will say.
Yeah, there's a lot less to her character for sure. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's so short, there's a lot less to everybody's
There's a lot less of
character.
everything. Yeah. Yeah.
So the innkeeper's wife gives this guy her crucifix, and everyone is like sad that he's going. It's clear that they feel like he's going off to his death. So next we see this foreboding clifftop castle. And we go into the crypt, and I don't know if you felt this way, but it felt like arty, like a Fellini film or whatever, with like all these
Yeah.
interesting angles. We've got a like bug coming out of a miniature coffin.
Yes, the Jerusalem cricket. Have you
So
ever seen one of
weird.
those? Yeah, I've
Mm-mm.
seen those. Like I've seen them in real life, and
Mm.
they're strange to see because they're about as big as your thumb, and they look kind of upsetting. Um, I'm fine with bugs, but like they just look a little otherworldly. And giving it a miniature coffin is so cute. What are they doing? Why is there a bug coffin, guys?
Yeah, Drax seems so humorless, but clearly he's got a soft spot for that cricket.
I like to think it was like one of the brides, like that's her pet.
That makes more sense.
In addition, of course, to the Jerusalem cricket, we have a possum, which kind of makes sense. It's also in a coffin.
It's like digging around a bone. Yep.
Yeah, I get that. They kind of look like the little rodenty, maybe some people will be scared. But then here comes the armadillo, and it's like,
How did that get there?
I have no idea.
Indigenous to Wallachia armadillo?
It's so weird.
Maybe he like ate a Western expedition, like exposition, like a a Wild Bill Hickok style traveling show, and he ate all of them and kept
That's
this
why the cowboy
armadillo.
doesn't show up in this movie because he already killed him and stole his armadillo.
The guy, is it Quincy?
Quincy, so rad.
The friendly, charming American. Everyone is so good in the book. Like,
Yeah,
everyone is so tender and sweet. I think that too is an anachronism in our modern context. Like, the characters are a little more combative in this one, whereas in the Bram Stoker book, like, everyone's like bosom friends and they're like taking care of each other and being sweet, crying more than you would expect Brits to be crying. It's sweet. Whereas this movie feels much more hot and cold, like a melodrama.
yeah, yeah.
Bela Lugosi, first time we see his Drac face, I feel like his left eye's bigger than his right eye. I don't know if it's makeup or what, but it's spooky.
I'm gonna be a jerk here. I think the first shot, Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little goofy.
Well, this whole section, this whole crypt thing is goofy.
He's got like his chin tucked in and he's making a face. It almost reminds me of something like Mike Myers would do as a joke. And it's weird because I'm sorry, Dracula fans. I love this movie, but like that first like camera pushing in on Dracula shot, he's making a little bit of a weird face. And I don't get it because every other close-up of Dracula in this movie is exquisite, perfect lighting, that ghoulish expression of like hunger and leering. But that opening shot is like a little bit SNL skit. Where I can almost
Yeah.
see, yeah.
Having seen Ed Wood, all I can think is he was like, what's my motivation? Why am I just standing in this crib doing nothing? Why am I looking at camera? There is no camera here.
It's a good point. What are you doing, Drac?
And so he couldn't give it his all. He's just like, I
Yeah.
just stand there and look spooky. That I guess I lift my eyebrows slightly.
I actually kind of buy that because like normally he's like leering at someone, and there's no one he's looking at. The brides are getting out of their coffins. He's just staring off into space.
The funny thing is Ed Wood has him do that same exact thing.
Oh God.
Later in the movie, he's like leering at the camera and going, pull the string! Pull the string!
I gotta watch that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I don't watch a lot of Johnny Depp's, but I might watch that one again.
You gotta be selective.
So
with
good.
Depths.
Fucking Depp. Arr.
Yeah.
So we survive this arty Fellini thing, and then we get the driver of the coach. Is it the same actor as
I
is it
believe
Bela
so.
Lugosi? Okay.
Yeah, and it's never I believe it's never specified in the novel, and one of the traditions of like Dracula adaptations is like it's obviously supposed to be Dracula because there's no one else, right? It's like him and the brides.
Yeah, he ate all his servants apparently. He scared them all off.
What do you think of like Dracula's actual like the castle? Because I feel like Dracula's castle is such like an iconic part of the story.
In the story, I'm rereading it, and I've only read it the once before, and I just remember it being spooky and sort of nebulous. But reading it again, it's enormous. Walls are thick. There's lots of windows, but it's like it's hard to get. Like it's dangerous. All the doors are fucking locked. Most of them from the outside. And eventually we find out why. It's for his safety. But
Yeah.
of course, you got to tell people why you're doing stuff for their safety, or they will try to get around it.
Yeah.
And so he got to see a bride snacking on a child, Does that happen in the movie?
No, no. They do have they start to do the Beautiful Lady story later, which involves children. But no, they leave out the back of babies in this book, which if we do like come back and talk about the novel, I have a lot to say about the bag of babies. But no, this opening scene is
Oh,
relatively.
I will
Oh,
say
sorry.
this. I love how small they make Renfield. Like they make him look really out of place and vulnerable and I can't tell if the whole thing is a matte painting or like how much of it is real. It's just so seamless. Like that's you've got the coach with the fog and the dust, and then he comes into the hall and it's just ruined. It's just a
It's
disaster.
so ruined. And that's not how I remember it from the book either. Like, I mean, of course, it was like a little run down, but like, I think this is the the most ruined Dracula's castle. It has a dirt floor. Like, it it looks like someone put some walls up in a graveyard. Um,
Yeah. Dracula's so slow. I am Dracula.
they have the great scene as they're going up the stairs, and Dracula's approaching the cobwebs, which is I don't even know what you'd call this. It's like the horror version of a sight gag because he's walking towards like this wall of spider webs across the staircase, and then it cuts to Renfield looking surprised, and then it cuts back to Dracula on the other side of the cobwebs.
And he didn't like disturb
Yeah,
them.
which is very creepy.
If they hadn't cut back to Renfield, like what would we have seen? Like pretending they have modern
Yeah,
CGI, like would he have disapparated into his component molecules and then reformed?
I kind of wonder if they would have just done like the more like 80s like composite shot where like they have someone walking and then like they have a second layer of the cobwebs and they just pass through it like low pan and Big Trouble in China style. Um,
Like he lowered his opacity as a person.
yeah, like kind of
Okay.
ghostly passes through it because he can't turn into mist. I think I forget if he can turn into mist for the movie.
He definitely does in the book.
Yeah. Oh, I think so because like when Renfield like looks out the window and sees the bat. Well, maybe there's more of like Dracula summons the mist, but they really crank up the fog machine, let me tell you.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh
the
yeah.
outside just completely disappears. Um,
Oh, so during the carriage ride up, I wrote, I don't think you could pay me to go through with this. I noticed Renfield has a real Elijah Wood vibe going here when he's like takes his hat off and he's like he's trying to look cute and deferential. This place is real three-dimensional too. Maybe it's because the set is so large, but there's
yeah.
like candlesticks up close and chairs and things just sort of poking into frame.
Yeah, the cinematographer for this movie was a he did German expressionism films, and he
Okay.
actually did Metropolis, and he would go on to do The Mummy after this, like the next year, I think. But you definitely see like the influence of uh, movies like, ironically enough, Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on these like towering crooked sets that just looks like Dracula's castle just looks like a straight up nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Terrible. Like in the
yeah,
book, I guess they have chapters to tell us the environment is bad because of
yeah,
who's in it. Whereas here, that they just have time to make the environment bad, just
it
how
just
it
looks
looks.
completely inhospitable. And not to throw any shade on the 58 Hammer horror of Dracula, aka Dracula, but as much as I love that movie with Christopher Lee and being Dracula, and I love Christopher Lee, I think that 58 Dracula, it's like the set designers did it a disservice because Dracula's castle is lovely. It's almost like comfortable Victorian, like pastels. It's lush, it's beautiful. It looks like a fine place to spend a weekend and like bust out the big table and play some D&D. And I'm just like, I don't know, this ain't that scary. Like, I kind of needs me some scary graveyard Draculas going on.
I can't decide if that's like an interesting way to handle it as a modern update. I assume it was modern rather than a period piece.
No, I think it was. I think it was reverting it to. I don't quote me on that though. No, I think it was. I think it was back to like setting it the age of the
Oh,
original novel.
interesting. Well, that
Yeah.
is a really weird choice if you're going to go back to old-timey times.
Yeah.
So I looked up Carl Freund, the cinematographer, best known for photographing Metropolis and Dracula in 31 and television's I Love Lucy.
Yeah,
in
he invented
51.
a three-camera technique that allowed them to set up multiple cameras and only use one reel of film, I want to say. And he
Whoa.
invented it for I Love Lucy, and it's a technique they use to this day for sitcoms. He was kind of a interesting dude.
That's really cool. I looked him up because I was wondering when he left Germany, or if he did. It says he worked under contract for MGM, so he must have left in 1930.
Oh yeah, I think Hollywood was like scooping him up even by the early 30s. It's weird today to think about how impactful Germany was on the art of cinema. And
Absolutely.
because like you'll say that to people and like you can kind of like know it, as like a factoid level, but let's face it, like when's the last time someone watched a German movie? I think for most people it was Run Lola Run in the
Yes.
90s. So it's hard to imagine a time when like Germany was like so far ahead in an art form, but like America is like kind of like headhunting their top talent. And Alfred Hitchcock is like going over to like learn their techniques and stuff. Um, but yeah, this movie is very well shot. Uh,
It's so
for
strange. I guess Hitler just destroyed the film industry,
Yeah,
among
I
other
mean,
things.
yeah, go figure. Artists just don't do well in that environment. Uh,
Shocking. If you enforce strict content rules at the barrel of a gun, probably doesn't lend well to innovation and creativity. Dracula, 1931.
Dracula. Anyway,
For some reason, I have a note here. Real Black Lodge motherfucker right here. I have no idea what that's in reference to.
sounds Twin Peaks-ish, but I don't know.
It's something Drac does before Renfield bleeds.
Hmm.
I think, yeah. Renfield cuts himself or something, and Drac gets all like horny.
Yeah,
But then the crucifix freaks him out.
it's a real mood killer for Drac.
Oh, Renfield meets the three brides. He screams and then passes out.
That scene's kind of funny to me. The brides have a very bad posture. I believe that it was supposed to look like feral or animalistic, but they're just slouching. And, it's like, ladies, roll your shoulders back. You're gonna get terrible spinal damage after years of that posture.
Those
It's from
dresses
sleeping in the
aren't
coffin.
those dresses aren't doing him any favors either. They're all
No.
bunchy. And then Drac comes in and he's like, "Stay away from my boyfriend."
Yeah, he's mine. Um, I love how Renfield goes down like a sack of potatoes out of nowhere. It's like a bat swoops down. And he's just like, ah! And I don't know. I
I
don't know
think
if
it's gay coded. I think
oh yeah.
he's kind of a fancy boy, and when three hot ladies show up, which in the book fucks up Jonathan Harker because he's like, I'm going to have to explain this to my wife or wife to be or whatever. And this guy just passes right out.
Yeah, yeah. And as I recall, like I saw it yesterday. I don't think he faints at the ladies. I think for whatever reason he turns to the window, like he's gonna like escape out the open doors. And I think Dracula Bat swoops down, and I can't quite tell if it's supposed to be like him getting mesmerized or if he's just like super scaredy cat, like afraid of bats, and just like clump faints.
Yeah, he opens the back door. The wives leer at him. Oh, and a big ass bat comes at
Swoops
his
by.
head. He clutches, oh my God. What a weird thing.
Right?
It must have been mind control, right? Just
I
go to
it has
sleep
to
or
be.
something.
Because he saw a bat on the way up on the coach. He looked out the window and instead of a coach driver, he just had a bat. He didn't like pass out then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
it
think it
must
must have
be.
been he got yeah.
Weirdly, the bat goes off to the left and Dracula comes in from the right.
He's like, I gotta go get something. His clothes are in like a little pile.
Oh my God. He just
It's like
lives for
his
the drama. He loves misdirection. He
yeah.
like flies off frame and then goes up and over the roof and then back down the other side. Oh, I
They
have
like
to slip behind the topiary to put my outfit back on.
they cut to him like frantically like pulling up his pants and swearing and trying to tie his shoes. Damn it, damn
He
it.
might wake up. I have to move more faster.
I gotta get there before those hungry brides. They're always eating my food before I get to it.
So, and he reaches in and his fingers just look like maybe they're supposed to be claws, but they're really just pointy sausage fingers pointing at the guy. And I'm like, are those going to go inside his face? Ah!
So that reminds me, so I may have missed it. Do you remember if there's a single shot of Dracula with his fangs in this movie?
I know we see them, but I don't think all we ever see is vamps looming into frame and like
Okay.
going down. Like they're going to be
Yeah.
something down there. But I don't think
Who
we
knows?
ever see blood on the neck. Yeah, it's pre-Hays Code too, so I don't know why they're being so coy about everything.
Yeah, and like I think if you go back, most of the like the Dracula leering, he's got very like tight lips, like covering his
Mm.
teeth. So I don't know if maybe the prosthetics were uncomfortable and like he didn't want to wear them in a lot of scenes. But it's funny because like you think Dracula in a movie, he's gonna be like flashing his fangs nonstop. But yeah.
Yeah, they're not. It doesn't feel like they're highlighted that much in the books. Like we'll hear about them, but people don't seem to take much notice of them, as if they're
Yeah.
not like obvious.
Hmm. That's true. Yeah.
I'm
That's probably why a
wondering
lot
if
of them
if they lengthen during the killing process.
they have to. Because like people always talk about like the two twin marks. And like if you're just doing that with normal like human incisors, like there'd be like a whole bunch of front teeth action, right? Like a normal like bite mark.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, in the book they talk about ragged edge pinprick. So it suggests that the tooth has a proboscis or something at the end
Yeah.
of it.
Ugh. Creepy. And
Like
then
a
we get
mosquito.
and then we smash cut almost immediately to the reveal that now he's like master.
Yeah,
Master.
oh, okay. So we don't know much about Renfield in the book. Like he starts out crazy, he ends crazy. Like, but here, because they made him do Harker's role, when he just becomes Renfieldy afterwards, we're left to wonder, did Drac suck his blood and now he's losing it? Was being stuck in this boat while the master kills everyone traumatizing, and so it's broken him? Like, something has clearly happened in those intervening scenes.
Yeah. And he's like right off the bat, he's like asking Dracula, like, will he get, I think he's asking like if he'll get lives or small lives, of course, not the large lives for you, small lives for me. And which is interesting because like in the book, you've got this, person in an insane asylum, and it almost at times feels like he's like constructing this mythology himself. It's hard to tell how much Dracula told him. Here, though, it very much feels like he's almost like a partial vampire, or he's been promised that he'd get like an upgrade if he stays a good servant.
So that part of it is picked up in the Dresden Files, where there's a book about vampires, and they call the sort of half-turned right-hand workers of vamps Renfields.
Oh, nice.
And that, like, the longer they serve, the more nuts and, like, inhuman they become, but they get stronger.
That's cool.
They get deadlier or whatever. And there's, like, a lady, like an old lady that's one, I think, at one point. But anyway, yeah, I like that reading. That, because in the book, it's almost like how Stephen King will make a kid psychic just so we can get some exposition from a different angle. Yeah. It's almost like that's his function in the book, is to be a weirdo that's clearly has a relationship with Drac, but we never see anything from his perspective or Dracula's perspective. So it's a mystery throughout.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of the reasons why you'd think we're going to replace Harker with Renfield flat out wouldn't work. In a lot of ways, like this is like one of the best Renfields, It really fleshes out as much damage as it does to Harker and makes him kind of just like window dressing.
Yeah.
Like, why are you even here, bro? But like Renfield, this is one of the most interesting Renfields. He's got a whole story arc. He's there till like almost the end of the movie, It feels like they really, I don't know, kind of a brilliant move.
Yeah, so at some point, Dracula kills everyone on this ship except Renfield. The ship limps into port, and some Coast Guard types show up, and they look down the hatch, and he's holding the ladder, and they go, "Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes." And it's like, the depiction of crazy people was so outlandish.
Yeah.
In the 30s. Like, it's just remarkable. No nuance or subtlety whatsoever.
I'm sorry, this is the one survivor of a massacre? Like, maybe dude's just a little traumatized. Random cop who looked down there and just announced he's completely mad. I mean, give the guy like a blanket and some hot cocoa. Ask him what he saw. What's going on here?
Yeah, that was pretty poor behavior by I'm not sure where they are. Dover's finest. Wherever the ship is. I think it was Whitby in the book. Let's see. Cuts to a newspaper. The sole survivor is a raving maniac. His craving to devour ants, flies, and other small living things to obtain their blood puzzles scientists. At present, he is under observation in Dr. Seward's sanitarium near London. Spooky.
Spooky.
So next we see Drac. You mentioned him looking all fly, going down the street in London. Does he kill some random flower lady?
Yes.
He looms in with his creepy fingers and drags her out of frame. She screams.
One thing I thought was kind of interesting about this version is Dracula doesn't age or get younger. He's like he's got his look. I think normally at this point in the story, you would have like that would be him like stopping for a snack, so he looks presentable enough to approach people in public. But here he's fine. He's totally dapper. Like, what are you doing, Drac? You just ate a boat full of dudes.
I love that he just ate a whole bunch of dudes, and it's the first thing he does when he gets to London is to get a light snack. It's like, come on, man. It's a little gluttonous, don't you think?
Yeah.
But this section really reminded me of Hannibal Lecter. The idea that he could be doing all these heinous murders, but he's so crisp and clean, and like, he'd just never get any blood on his suit.
No, never.
He's got a fancy medallion, a white bow tie.
Top hat.
Looking good, Drac. So then there's this weird scene where he goes to the theater. It's like a private box with a fancy guy, his son-in-law, and then Mina, the guy's daughter. So is this Mr. Murray?
So I think
Mina's dad?
they changed it up a bit. So I think Dr. Seward, who was the head of the asylum in the novel, who was a young man and one of Mina's suitors, in a very weird scene I'll rant about at some point. They took him from like a young guy and they made him Lucy's father, I want to say.
Oh, Lucy's father.
I think it might be Mina's father, but they turned him into an older gentleman and they made him like a father of one of the gals.
Interesting. Yeah, Lucy only had her mother in the book, and her mother straight up dies on top of her.
Oh my God, that was so brutal.
Oh my God. See Bram Stoker's Dracula for some of that wildness.
Shockingly gruesome novel, I have to say, considering when it was written. There's some stuff in that book I could not believe I was reading. And then it'll be like totally dry, like, ballroom genteel, like civility, for like 75 pages. And then out of nowhere, like there's a bag baby or something. And you're just like, what is going on?
Just a bag baby. No big deal.
You know how we do.
So Drac manipulates a lady into going to the box, to introducing them to him. So we meet his daughter, Mina, Miss Lucy Western, and Mina's husband, Jonathan Harker. And Drac compares his castle in Transylvania to Carfax Abbey, which I guess is his new house.
Yeah, that's what he wanted to meet Renfield over, like purchasing that property.
Okay. So he did purchase it. It's not like a what are those things called? Long-term vacation like rental?
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Yeah. And there's even a scene where, what do you call it? Lucy, I believe, maybe Mina. One of them is like, well, I hope you're not going to like renovate the Abbey. Or not going to change. No, maybe she's like, you can finally fix up that dump, basically. And Dracula's like, oh, I plan to change.
I shall do very little repairing.
Yeah. I am a terrible landlord. I will not. What's that? You have no heat? Bundle up.
I'll get to it Thursday.
Workshopping my new bad landlord Dracula character.
So yeah, somehow the subject of a spooky poem comes up, and Lucy finishes it. And it's about death, and she's like, oh, death. And he says to die, to be really dead. That must be glorious. And Mina's like, oh, but Count Dracula. There are far worse things awaiting man than death. To which I say, what?
That exchange is very strange. I don't remember that from the novel or other adaptations.
Oh, it's definitely not in the book.
The first part is really cool, like, because it's like a window into this guy's psyche, and it's like, oh shit, so like he is unhappy. It's very much like 90s Vampire the Masquerade, the torment of immortality, like and then so you're just when you're thinking like, oh, this guy like doesn't like his undeath, and then he switches it over to like, well, there's far worse thing, and then it just makes him sound like kind of like a torturous crime lord or something. Like, hey, I'll do worse things to you than death. Like, you're gonna be begging for it. Then we get your toes with the pliers. And it's
hey,
just
that's a good-looking body you got there. It'd be a shame if something was to happen to it.
We got the clamps. Yeah, the clamps.
Okay, we got Brooklyn Dracula. Write
He's
that down.
yeah, Brooklyn Slumlord Dracula is my new character, albeit the yuck hut is Sunday. Uh,
Oh, shit. So
and
the
then
far worse thing awaiting man. See, I thought he was talking about it's me coming to suck your blood.
that could totally be. He's
But
like, death
maybe
is
he's
nothing.
talking about losing your soul and never being able to see the sun again or whatever. Like it's the downsides of being a vampire.
Yeah. See, that's kind of what I kind of thought that in reverse. Like, oh, he's talking about the downsides, and then when he switches it with like there are far worse things, I think you might be right. I think he might just be talking about himself. Like basically saying like, yeah, death, nothing. Death's got nothing on me. I'm Dracula,
But for him to generalize it, it suggests that there's going to be a ton of vampires and everybody's going to be having this problem. You know,
It's true.
like he's going to have to put out chicken soup for the vampire no soul, or he's, there's going to be support groups.
Chicken blood soup. My unauthorized parody of chicken soup and soul novels. Or, I want to say before I forget though, I loved Mina's reaction to Lucy's spooky poem, which is like a very like 1920s like flapper daddy. She's just like, "Oh, Lucy, oh, that's terribly dreadful. Please, you're giving me the chills. Oh."
I've got the vapors.
Yeah, it was so cartoonish. Mina is a completely different character in the movie, but I think her new personality really shines for the first her first few scenes, and before the movie forgets that she exists, more or less.
Yeah, it's a shame too because the actress is selling it. Like she has so much charisma. Yeah. Like she has the goods. That's just the screenwriter didn't bring enough from the novel.
It's the 1931 year movie is just going to eventually turn into several men in suits in a living room talking to each other for 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And Mina no longer has any lines. But for her first few scenes, very charming actress, and I liked how like bubbly and girlish, and which is like the exact opposite of her in the novel. But it's an interesting. If you're going to rewrite her, it's at least an interesting character. You know?
Yeah. For some reason, they make Lucy have short blonde hair instead of, like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola, she has red curly hair.
Yeah, like long red hair. Yeah.
I think in the book she has dark hair. But yeah. I don't know. I feel like Lucy gets less to do as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So after this weird scene, Lucy tells Mina that she's hot for Drac. Mina thinks she should go for someone more normal. And Lucy's like Jonathan. Ugh.
Which hashtag Team Lucy? I'm with her. Like, come on. Jonathan, you're
I'll leave you to your count and his ruined abbey.
This is when Mina just starts like impersonating how he talks and just completely shitting on him, which I thought was hilarious. I did not remember that at all. Like
yeah,
to have
that's
a character
good move.
Just dump on your horror villain early on. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of a I'll be right back moment from Scream.
Yeah.
I wonder if the viewers got that. You know what I mean? Like, if they're really familiar with the Dracula story, they might enjoy that, like, puncturing of Dracula's bubble.
I could see that. And plus, I think it's also kind of like lampshade hanging. Because you don't really get, like, a lot of lines within the movie acknowledging how out of time he is. Considering, like, he is very much like this, like, they just basically like lifted the character from, the 1800s novel and just like dumped him into the 1930s with very little changes.
Yeah.
And not many people are like, why is old-fashioned guy walking around? He doesn't know what a car is. He's marveling at the moving pitches,
Yeah, how come you never have a car? Well, it's because I fly everywhere. You wouldn't understand. Oh, now I have to mind control you and wipe your memory.
Ah,
Shit.
damn.
So I'm a little behind. I feel like we'll have to rush through some of this stuff.
That's okay. Yeah.
Lucy's in bed reading. This huge fucking bat comes to the window, flapping up and down. It's got little glowing cheeks and ears and things. But she noticeably doesn't invite it in. She drifts off to sleep, and then it comes in, and Drac's there, and he advances on her with his fucking sausage fingers. So scary.
Yeah.
And he gets his face like right up near her neck. And this, I felt, I don't know if it's just because Lucy's like a pretty lady and she's asleep or whatever, but I got a weird, creepy, I don't know, sex thing. Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I know that's always sort of a vague part of vampire stories, but
I think they definitely turned up the dial a bit this one, probably because it was pre-code.
yeah, I just didn't expect to see it in this old ass movie.
Yeah, and like the interesting thing is like, so if you go back to one of the things that shocked me about the book is how completely unsexy Dracula is. Like they make it a point to hammer home. He's grotesque. Even in scenes like there's a scene spoilers for Dracula, but there's a scene where like everyone bursts in on Mina and she's being like forced to drink his blood from his chest and it's described horrifically. Like there's nothing like sensual about it. It is as gross as being forced to drink blood out of some random dude's chest would be for anybody, I'm sure, right? That's not how you want to spend your day. Maybe it is, I don't judge, but I think most people, especially some uninvited stranger in your house, like drink my chest blood, you're gonna pass. No thanks.
Speak for yourself on that one. It would depend how pretty she is, honestly.
Pretty random dudes listening with no abundance of chest blood. Jeff is down to go.
Damn it! Oh, I fucked myself there.
So, and like that's definitely a scene that I think in a modern adaptation it would be drink the chest blood. It'd be very sexy. Not so in the book. And I think I have a theory that with every adaptation, there's a dial saying how overtly sexual is Dracula. But every time you adapt Dracula, you have to turn the dial up a little bit, and you're not allowed to turn it back down. And I think these days it's like stuck too far, but they can't turn.
Did they ever go back? Did anybody ever try to make an unsexy Dracula?
Gosh, I don't think so. I mean, maybe.
Ooh, The Passage. It's a sci-fi story, so it's not the real Dracula, so it's different. But they're like scary 28 days later zombie vampires.
Oh, okay, nice. I know that there was just a new Salem's Lot that HBO dumped, and it is kind of bad. But there's a very like unsexy Dracula though. It's very much like Nosferatu.
Barlow is never felt sexy. Although he did have a scene with dudes. Was it Susan? The young girl in that one?
I forget.
The protagonist's love interest, who, spoiler alert, does not turn out well from that book.
Dracula's always going after your girl, It's one of the reasons why people don't like it. It's like, Drac, what are you doing?
Yeah.
She's in a stable relationship.
So next we cut to Seward Sanitarium, and it's one of those old school ones with the theater where everybody's looming over in their lab coats, trying to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's an autopsy, right? And he says, on the throat of each victim, the same 2 marks. And so this is way more attention to forensic pathology than we ever got in the books. He's just out there doing it in front of everybody, like it's a lobotomy or something.
And this is Lucy on the table, right?
Yeah.
We've already cut. Yeah, that was kind of a shocking jump cut.
Yeah, it takes her forever to die in the books. In this, it's just boom. She's on the slab. Next, we see the grounds of the sanitarium and people being pushed along. We got nurses. Somebody starts screaming. And it's Renfield. He's got these flies and spiders and things, and this orderly throws his spider out the window. And this is our comedy character.
I love this guy. Dude looks like the kindly grandpa from Babe, but just playing like the goofiest, derpiest guard, which I'm going to say you wouldn't think insane asylum guard. Fun guy, right? Like, that's a very grim character, I would think.
It is a choice, right? Like,
That's
orderlies
your
are
comedy?
either professional people just doing a job, or they're Hollywood bully, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Enjoys every opportunity to beat up a inmate. But this one just likes to goof. And he calls him a loony to his face.
That's not good, folks. Dracula is very unkind to folks with mental health issues as a whole.
Poor Renfield. Yeah, I could talk all day about that, but
Yeah.
the fact is, in the book, he's known as a like nascent murderer. Like, Seward assumes he'll murder eventually if they let him out, and he keeps escaping. Or being let out by Dracula. We never really find out. So now we see Gary Oldman doing some experimenting. Sort of an Oldman von Sydow, I think.
Alden von Sydow. Is that Van Helsing?
Yeah,
With
he's
his
got a
little
chest
potions?
tube. He takes off his safety glasses. He looks around. Read, Dummkopf, where I have marked. His poor clerk. He's just taking abuse.
This guy, I didn't look at the actor they got to play Van Helsing.
Gentlemen, we are dealing with the undead. Yes, Nosferatu. Renfield doesn't even go there until like right near the end in the book. And here he's just like, yep, this shit is real. 4 guys at my table. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Van Helsing is weird. His presence is weird in this movie. Like they really, like I think since they completely dropped Lucy's slow, tragic decline, we really can't justify Van Helsing's presence in the movie. But he's here because you got to have Van Helsing. So he's just like vampires. So this actor is such a weird presence physically. He's like a pit bull of a man. He's very stocky and muscular and beefy. He looks like he could have been like maybe a medium weight prize fighter, which is not what I think you think of when you imagine Van Helsing. And he's got he's like a white haired buzz cut.
Mm-hmm.
He's got I will say he's got like a general presence, like not general as in general, but like an army general, which is kind of a choice for Van Helsing. And now I will make another shocking confession. I think Van Helsing is a much better character in concept than we ever truly see anywhere. I think we're all in
any
love.
adaptation.
Or even the original book. He bugged me in the book. I hate to say it.
He's just this nice, friendly old man with no delusions of grandeur or like desire to feather his own nest or be famous. He's not part of an ancient order of vampire hunters. He's just a guy.
And he's got the whole like Dutch way of poorly translated his Dutch like slang. So it'd be like he'd go on these like rambling broken English monologues in the novel where he'd be like, he's got this child brain, adult brain, baby brain thing. He goes on for like a page and a half. And by the end of it, you just want to grab the man and shake him and be like, what are you talking about?
What are you getting at?
I've lost the thread.
He says really wise shit in the books, but he takes forever getting to it.
Yeah. And I like because it's funny because like Van Helsing is like the quintessential monster hunter. He's the ideal monster hunter. He was like the first, I mean, it's not like a Beowulf kind of like heroic muscle dude punching a dragon. Like here's the first like science guy. He's gonna take down the supernatural with science. Uh but I don't know. I'm never I think I love the idea of the character more than any of his realized forms. This guy's interesting though. I'll give him that. He's a very visually interesting dude.
I think the closest comp I can get to him in the book is like Sherlock Holmes. Like he's a consulting detective, If you
Yeah.
got a tricky mental patient, he'll come over and take a look. But in the movie, he's clearly knowledgeable about vampires. So when he meets Renfield, the power dynamic is very different. It's like he respects him as a potential adversary instead of just a nutter that he's, taking a look at.
Yeah. Yeah. And
He's
that's kind of
he's
mirrored.
looking at Renfield's hands and he goes, "Keep your filthy hands to yourself."
Renfield kind of acting up. Like he's very well behaved most of the time, but sometimes he just like can't help himself.
Yes. Oh, and I did want to talk about this. He reminds me a lot of my brother who experienced some challenges
Hmm.
in this way. And he would go from like 0 to 100. He would like smile a lot, but it was unsettling because you don't know what's
Yeah.
going on in his head. And you never knew what could set him off. Or, and even though he never really was too violent, like you never were sure that he wouldn't do,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, which a lot of that could be just stigma from what, we thought we knew about various mental illnesses. But like in 1931,
Oh, yeah.
this is the best depiction we're going to get. Oh, man. Oh, there is a thing in here that isn't in the book, which is that he seems to care about Mina or Lucy being hurt by Count Dracula.
Oh, Renfield?
Yeah, it's like
Hmm.
he at once wants to serve Dracula, but he also like doesn't want Dracula to hurt people. It
That makes
leads to his
sense.
death at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is probably tied into the fact that unlike the book, like we're with him since the opening scene and he's more of a main character with like a character arc. And that could almost be seen as like his redemption at the end. Like trying to stick his neck out for humans instead of just being full on like, yeah, Dracula, let's go.
Yeah. It is a big performance when
It
he gets
is,
right
yeah.
up in Renfield's face. Oh, and then there's some howling. And he's like, "Oh, is that a wolf?" And then at the end of the scene, the annoying comedy orderly Martin says, "He thinks they're howling back at him. He's crazy." Oh boy. Van Helsing shoves some wolfsbane in Renfield's face. Oh no, it's Dracula.
Yeah,
Dracula and
yeah.
Van Helsing meet up. I must have been too focused on what was going on because I missed the whole rest of that scene.
Well, I think this is where the movie starts to break down into like a series of like living room scenes. Um, I think
Yeah.
it's a little easy to kind of like lose the thread a bit in this portion of the movie. Uh, now, at this point, have we gotten to the beautiful lady with like Lucy rising?
No.
Okay.
Renfield is yelling from his cell. He doesn't want Drac to do something to Mina, but he won't explain
Oh,
what it is. Drac enters Mina's room. Well, it can't be Lucy because Lucy's already dead, right?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So he enters Mina's room. He makes the grimace face. He leans forward. And next day, Mina tells us about the dream. It seemed the whole room was filled with mist. It was so thick, I could just see the lamp by the bed, a tiny spark in the fog. And then I saw two red eyes staring at me. and a white, livid face came down out of the mist. It came closer and closer. She's staring right at the camera. I felt its breath on my face. And then its lips. Harker tells her. So Harker's job is just to be the dutiful husband who tells her it's all in her head.
Right. He's your non-supportive skeptic. He's just like, nah.
Yeah, that wasn't really a thing in the book, I don't think.
No, because he was there to begin with. Like, if he by this point he would have been like getting back from the
He
convent
comes back
that he was
from the
convalescing
convent,
in. Yeah.
So in this, Van Helsing looks at her neck and sees the holes. And Harker's like, "What, Mina? Why didn't you tell us?" It seemed as if all the life had been drained out of me. Harker claims she's hiding something. Oh, that's when they see the neck. I gotta say, consent apparently means nothing in 1931, because he's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine, right? It's totally fine," as he like yanks her scarf away.
Seriously,
Come on, dude.
yeah.
There's this great moment where somebody goes, "What could have caused them, Doctor?" And the servant says, "Count Dracula." And there's Count Dracula. Oh, that was beautiful.
I noticed that too. That was great. That was a great moment.
It's
Which is funny because
like that where you could see this done as a comedy.
Yes. It's also funny because like a lot of times filmmakers will use that technique as a form of foreshadowing. So at the end of the movie, we think this more likely the second time we view it, we're like, "Oh wow, it's right there the whole time. We didn't notice." But here, we clearly know it's Dracula, and they're still doing it, which does kind of make it comedic. But I just thought it was a great moment, even if it's kind of unintentionally funny.
So Mina's breathing heavy, but then as soon as Dracula looks at her, she gets like into it. And she's like, "I'm not afraid." Drac recognizes Van Helsing's name. Van Helsing gives a little quick bow. Like, does Drac already know Van Helsing's onto him? I mean, if Van Helsing's out here telling his random friends that there's vampires out there, surely word's gotten out.
Yeah, I get the feeling that like in this story, like Van Helsing is like just like an open vampire hunter guy for some reason. And it probably word just got out. Plus, I feel like you're a vampire probably pays to keep tabs on vocal vampire hunters just in case.
Oh yeah, it'd be like if you're a con man and you run into who's that guy that exposes all the spiritualists and mediums.
Oh yeah,
the Amazing Randy.
James. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who are you thinking of?
Oh, isn't his name James Randolph or something?
Anyway, a professional skeptic, a con man would be like, "Ooh, I don't know." Let's see here. The Count claims to have told Mina some vampire stories, and that's why she got spooked. Asshole. And this brings us the reflection thing. Was reflection in the book?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
I feel like I would have remembered any mirror talk in the book.
Yeah, I think at this point in the book, we were much more focused on blood transfusions, which is kind of interesting because when the book came out, it was borderline speculative fiction. I think it was like an experimental medical procedure. The way they're explaining it as if we're like 30 years out from this really working, but he read about it in some like, medical journal and it sounded neat to him, which is another change from the time this movie takes place. A blood transfusion was like, yeah, we're doing a blood transfusion. Like we can do that now. It's the 30s. Which is kind of like an interesting shift.
I have an unexpected development to bring to your attention.
Okay.
which is in my chronology. We're only halfway through,
Oof.
and we've already been podcasting for 2 hours.
Oh my God.
Would you be open to the idea of a second episode?
Yes, we could do part 2. I think that's a good idea.
This will give me a chance to watch the Spanish one to finish the book.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
That's exciting. Okay.
we can do a part 2. I can yammer more about the book and the Spanish
I kept
version.
looking at my notes and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do all these.
Plus, it feels like the mirror scene is like a memorable point to stop at. Like, yeah, that's win.
Yeah. First, Van Helsing notices, and then he shows Harker. So, like, Harker, who in the books doesn't find out until his wife has already found out, and sort of finds out off screen because it's all letters and things. Whereas here, he finds out, and I don't know if it's the actor or the role, but he doesn't seem as stunned as I might have been. Like, I don't know if I could hold my shit together long enough for Van Helsing to show the guy his reflection.
I would definitely be like, what the hell? You know, just like blow the entire...
Dracula would turn slowly around.
Yeah.
What seems to be the trouble?
I'd be like, oh, I got a pimple on my forehead. Let me just go get some concealer. Yeah, don't... If... For our listeners, if you're ever trying to suss out who's the vampire, don't let me in on it. Just tell me later. I'm going to blow everything.
Be cool, Jayme. This is why we don't tell you stuff.
That's why we never tell you about vampires. Jeez.
So anyway, Dracula totally busts himself out. All he has to do is like turn around and be like, gents, I have to go, and dip out. But instead, he hurls the fucking box down.
Yeah.
In disgust.
Doesn't he come up with some half-assed excuse? Like, whoops, my reflexes are funny today or something. He's got some weird line that's completely unconvincing. I'm afraid of boxes. Oh.
Okay, so this, we can end here.
Yeah.
My questions are this.
Okay.
Are Draculas afraid of seeing themselves? Because he was fast on the draw, right? It wasn't just, oh, you caught me, fuck you. It was like, I don't want to see it. So then I'm like, are they ashamed that they don't have a reflection anymore? Or is it a reminder that they no longer have a soul?
Ooh. It does make sense because the way he says we have no mirrors in my castle early on, that's not like, if he's not freaked out by mirrors on a personal level, he could still have them like up in his private quarters or something because what's it matter, right? So it does seem like, yeah, maybe it's like a weird reminder. It could also, not to like psychoanalyze Dracula, but it could also be kind of like a weakness kind of a thing because like he's so powerful. He can fly, he can mind control, he can turn people into his servants and thralls, but he doesn't have a reflection. That's like the one thing. I mean, I guess he can't go out in the sun either. Who cares? I don't go out in the sun. But like he can't look at himself in the mirror. And that's something these pesky humans can do that he can't.
Yeah, it's a weakness. That's interesting. He is so driven by ego. I mean, that drama with going to one side as a bat and coming out the other side as a man, like,
yeah,
it's just your wives, dude. The other guy's asleep. Like, you don't have to do that.
What if his transformation's really embarrassing? Like he starts out as a bat, and then he looks all goofy and like midway point, and like they laugh at him, or they're holding back their giggles. It's like, no, don't look, do not look at me. I'm partial man right now. Wait, I need to get dressed.
So he's got this big ego, and he doesn't want to be reminded of his weaknesses. I like that.
Yeah.
That's
And who
good.
knows? In life, he could have been like one, like one of those people always fixing their hair in the mirror, And
Mm-hmm.
maybe this is like he hates that he can't do that.
You hate that you can't see the sun anymore. You also can't look at your own pretty face anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like that either.
No.
Whereas if he was a hideous Nosferatu, he wouldn't care, right?
Right. He'd be like, good.
Nobody needs to see this.
I bet you wish you were a mirror. Then you couldn't see me either, huh? Huh?
Nosferatu doing stand up. Let's put that on the list.
Yeah.
Or doing bits, at least.
Yeah. What if I dozens of workshopped vampire stand-up characters?
All right. End part 1.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned for part 2. Wow. Okay. Recommendations. Do you have any recommendations? Something you think people should be reading, watching, listening to?
Yeah. I think I'm going to recommend a couple of vampire movies because we were talking earlier about what got me into it. So I think just for fun, I'm going to recommend Fright Night from I think 1986, which was one of the original like What If Dracula was in the suburbs kind of movies. And then as a companion piece, I'm going to recommend the Fright Night remake starring Colin Farrell plays the vampire. And then if we were talking about sexy vampires before, this guy's like he's like super sexy vampire, right? He's going on full on Colin Farrell. Uh David Tennant plays the horror host character, only it's updated now as more of like a goth rocker. And if you've ever wanted to see like David Tennant with like long hair, like fighting vampires, this is your movie.
Okay, this is my homework because everybody knows I'm a Doctor Who fan. I love David Tennant.
Oh, and starring Anton Yeltsin uh,
Anton
from Star Trek.
Yelchin from Star Trek?
Yeah, he's the star.
That's
Great
awesome.
cast, and one of the rare. I mean, I could name like horror remakes that are as good as the original in one hand. There's maybe five, right? And this is one of them. Fright Night, the original is a classic. I love it, and the remake is also good, really good. So that's a fun double feature.
It's funny. I only saw the Fright Night sequel set
Oh
in an
no.
evil hotel or something out in the middle of nowhere. Does that ring a bell? Demon Night.
Oh, Demon Night?
No, that's not a Fright Night sequel.
No. I mean, there
For
is a
some
Fright
reason I
Night
thought it
2, I
was.
think set in Vegas. I think both both the original and the remake got sequels that are like less good. Um Demon Knight's decent though. It's set on Halloween. It's got Liana Quigley.
Isn't that set in a weird building out in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah,
Nobody
like a
can
haunted
leave?
house. People start turning into demons.
Okay, yeah. I don't know why I
Does it
thought
have
that
like a
was Fright Night too.
does it have an extended sequence with a like a goth lady dancing, like this weird like 80s music video dance?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, it's probably that one. Yeah, anyway, that's different thing.
Okay, I'm gonna watch the Fright Night remake before we reconvene.
Hell yeah.
That's great. Oh, I forgot to ask. Do you have any relationship with the work of Elvira, vampire
God,
adjacent?
I love Elvira. Elvira is the best. I grew up watching Elvira. Her movies are fantastic if you like spooky fun, which I do. I secretly love spookiness more than horror, you know? And so her first movie is just like, what if just a random horror host wandered into actual like monsters, which is always a fun idea. And then she also did fans of Dracula might like this one even more. She did Elvira's Haunted Hills, which is a parody of like Hammer Gothic horror movies, which is very much like the entire environment is, Transylvania, stay off the moors, like castles and people being like, beware. And she's just Elvira, like just marching through it like it's nothing. Uh,
That's
yeah.
awesome. I recently watched one with her most recent. It was fun. It was weird to see Elvira old, though.
Yeah, she's still going at it. She still got it.
So good. All right, my recommendations. Oh, I've been making so many of these so quickly that I keep running out of things to recommend. Let me look at my podcasts here. The Duras Sisters podcast. If you like Star Trek, if you're pretty well across it, it's not a watch along. They like take a theme and talk about a series on that theme, and then the next week they'll advance to the next series. But like, so they do. It's like a kind of like a mini season of descriptions of, like, they do a holodeck series. Now they're on to the Prime Directive.
That's awesome. I love that.
And they have a Patreon where they cover the animated series and Lower Decks. But yeah, they're two really funny and thoughtful, interesting sisters, Ashlyn and Rihanna. Highly recommend that. Yeah, I think that'll do it for now. I feel like I just finished a book. I keep looking at... Oh, no, it's the Vorkosigan saga. I'm covering it, so that's what I'm reading right now.
Okay.
The Vor game. Stay tuned, folks. Me and Sophia will be covering. They might have already heard it by the time we come to you. But because of the way these things are, people grab this and that, I definitely recommend anybody listening to us now, check out the Vorkosigan saga. It's the shit. Sci-fi, sort of kind of military space business, but it's the main character is somewhat disabled, so it's got a whole different vibe than what you might be used to.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, check that out. The Vor Game is my favorite of those books, by Lois McMaster Bujold. Okay. Ordinarily, at this point in the show, I would ask you if you'd like to come back. We'd kind of wrangle what that might be. If you didn't have a good idea, we'd go to the big list. But we know where we're going to be next time.
Yeah.
Dracula.
Yeah, you don't need me to keep shouting Dracula. I'll do it. I'll just start shouting Dracula and we'll cover them all.
We're at minute 42. So, listener, if you want to get to minute 42, you'll be all caught up. So, yeah. I like to end these things with a quote. There's a lot of great ones in the later half. Here's a good one. No, that's in the next half. Let me keep going. Is there anything the matter with your throat? No. It seemed as if all the life had been drained out of me.
Can I do one?
Yes, please.
Okay. I never drink wine. And then he looks at the camera and he winks. And then he mouths, I drink blood. I'm a vampire. This guy doesn't know.
Well done. How do people find you on the internet?
You can find me as a podcast. It's called a Shattered Worlds RPG. It's brilliant. The Game Master's a heck of a chap. The cast are lovely and talented, myself included. And I'm there playing a zany space diplomat named Ebenezer Crunches.
Ambassador Crunch. One of the greats.
So check that out for more of me speaking in weird voices.
Hell yeah. You can find me on all the things at El Jefe Tacoma. I haven't moved Shattered Worlds over from Twitter yet, so find us on Facebook. I also do Omniversal Escapades, which is a streaming show where we play a bunch of different games. Jayme was on it early on. Right now we're doing a cowboy sort of post-apocalyptic thing with D&D 5e, and we just teamed up with this bad guy that we were supposed to bring down, but instead we talked him into helping us find this thing, and he was part of the group that kind of wiped out my clan and kidnapped some of my people. But my character is so focused on the mission that she's just like putting that aside. She even slept with him for some reason. She's just,
That's some real like
DCF.
season 2, like enemies become your friend kind of stuff going on here.
Yeah.
The audience is like, what? No, how could you?
She doesn't really respect him though, so that'll be interesting to see how this goes going on their first mission together. That'll do it, I think. Oh, send us an email, greatandsekretknowledge@gmail.com. And we have a Discord, so if you'd like to find out how to join that, check the show notes. It'll all be there for you. You just have to have Discord and say yes once you click the link. That sounds good. Do you have anything else?
Blah.
Join us next time. Goodbye.
Blood. Blah.
I got some blood on my collar. I'd lick it, but my tongue is not long enough.
What is it? More winking at the camera.
I need this Winky Dracula. Let's have him return next time. You know too much to live, Van Helsing. A huge thanks to James Lark of jameslark.co.uk for providing our wonderful theme song. Thank you, James.
My understanding of history is not great. So I tend to bounce off stories that rely on like, okay, check it out. So like, it's a little dull, but check it out. Because in Act 3, like Horace Octavio, he doesn't pass the vote. And I'm like, oh, what? What? Okay, that's his real. And yeah, that's just someone I just made up. But if you knew who he was, your mind would be blown right now. I tend to blame cabals for everything. It helps me get through the day. Yeah.
Cabals, cartels, shadowy backroom dealers, fat cats with cigars.
But literally cats. You just got to blame him for everything.
So it's like in the style of dogs playing poker, but it's fat cats smoking cigars.
Yeah, like the crime lord from Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, they're stuffing ballot boxes.
They've got those weird fingerless gloves. They're cat paws.
Oh man, there's this great book called Mun Mun, which in place of the class system we now have, as you make more money, you get to be stretched into a larger body. And so it's like at the bottom, people are like secretive Nim, like the Littles or whatever, hiding and that under threat constantly by other animals and cats and shit. And then they get bigger and bigger until at the very end, the biggest billionaire is like a giant behemoth. And it's really, really great. I can't remember why I mentioned it. What did you say right before that?
I said Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Yes. So the step I skipped was that I was thinking the mob boss should be the giant cat from Secret of Nim.
There we go.
the biggest cat, But then I was like, well, as a good analogy, can a mob boss be well represented by a big dumb cat?
I mean, not if you don't want to get your legs broken. I tend to like representing my mob bosses with just brilliant, good-looking cats. You know what? Accidentally, yeah,
Like a Mephistopheles, like a real class act.
yeah, yeah. Or maybe we can just like time travel and get Al Pacino for the project.
Oh, not Mephistopheles. He's the devil. No, McCavity is the bad crime boss one from Cats.
Oh, I've never seen Cats.
Ooh, it's an experience, or at least it was when I was 8 or whatever when I saw it. I didn't see the movie because it looked so heinous.
I hear it's not great.
In Britain, they say heinous.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they know they're wrong?
I think so. I'm sure someone's told them.
Normally, I don't like to argue like for American pronunciations of things, but there are a few where it's just like, I mean, clearly, if not correct, like we're at least like we improved on perfection.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Aluminum, all the letters are there. Aluminium, what the fuck?
Yeah. It kind of sounds like you're like from Neptune and trying to pass as human at that point.
Yep, you're just adding vowels where you shouldn't. Take that, Great Britain. Or is that a purely English problem? I don't know if the Scots are out here saying aluminium.
I doubt it. They probably have a
Northern
much
Irish.
better way to say it.
Aluminum. That was Mike Myers' dad.
Head!
Heed.
Head! There's your So I Married an Axe Murderer reference of the episode.
Man. God, I love that movie. It's not speculative fiction, so we can't do it on this program.
Curses. We could
Maybe
speculate that one day I may marry an axe murderer. Like it could happen.
That's an interesting puzzler because it's still the genre is just generic crime story. But if it's you in the future.
Yeah.
But I feel like still it's got to have a time travel element or like, I don't know, cooler.
Yeah.
Something phones can do that they can't now,
What if phones, but more?
Yeah, it's like Black Mirror 2,
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you try to push the definition of speculative fiction into any story, you speculate about something. That's pretty much all stories that are nonfiction or that are fiction.
Yeah. What's weird though is Inglorious Bastards could be considered speculative fiction because stuff happens in it that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, alter
real
history.
Past. Same
I'd say
with
so.
that other one he did, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
It's mixing real and not real events. There's a book like that called Ragtime that won a Nebula. And I was reading it and I'm like, this is just the history of the 20s. What are we doing? And apparently it's just slightly different from real histories, so it snuck in there. I was not amused.
That's too bad. That's a problem I ran into in the Hyperion novels because I think Hyperion, the first one, is just one of the best all time. I love it.
It's
Um,
quite epic for sure. I don't know if I've read the other ones.
Kind of wouldn't recommend it really. Like two maybe if
I
you really
heard
want to.
recently that people didn't like the sequels, that they I wonder if we should talk about it on this show.
Yeah, probably
It doesn't
not. I don't.
seem really germane to Dracula. Maybe I'll just stick it in the
That's
back.
true.
Related to alternative history, what bumped you on
Yeah. Oh,
Hyperion?
so there, the Hyperion Cantos Quartet, whatever. It's basically like two parts, and there's like a couple novels in the first part, and they tell a complete story, and then in the next part, it's you can cut all this, but it's mostly like a lazy like riverboat trip that keeps thinking back to Lord Byron for some reason, and like there's like connections.
I did read that and I fucking loved it.
Oh, you did? Okay, well, you probably know more about Lord Byron than I do. Like I
Oh
was
my God.
lost. I was
That
like, "Where's
is
the shrine?"
hilarious. I was like, this sounds really familiar. I might have read that.
I think that's Empyrean, uh, the
Oh
Riverboat
man.
one. I never read the last one because Empyrean, I just kind of bounced off of it. But I've been thinking of giving them all a read through in the future.
God,
But you're right.
how do you go from like monsters trapped in rock on an ancient planet to Lord Byron?
It really strikes me as kind of one of those deals where like an author had finished the story and his publisher's like, "What's next?" And so he's kind of low key dusting off a brand new book series. And he's like, "Well, this takes place 1,000 years later. See?"